Hey Jackson, curious about our water system? Join the Jackson Water Academy to get the inside scoop on our water and sewer operations. 3 sessions, 3 months, and a whole lot of hands-on know-how. You'll even get a behind-the-scenes tour of the O.B. Curtis Water Treatment Plant. So if you're ready to dive in, head to jacksonwater.com/water academy or give us a ring at 601-500-5200 to apply. But hurry, spots are going fast.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for WLBT Plus. My name is Kara Shirley. I'm your digital news desk host, and we are continuing our series where we are interviewing candidates for the mayor of Jackson. Today, we have the self-proclaimed radio strongman, Mr. Kim Wade, in here with us today, running as an independent. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Glad to be here. Appreciate the invite.
I'm very happy to have you here. I'm going to get you to pull this a little closer to your mouth. I want to make sure everybody can hear you good. So you are a talk radio host here in Jackson. Tell us, for those of the people who are viewing who may not be familiar with you, tell me more about yourself.
Well, I've been in Jackson since 1981. My job moved me here from the phone company. Retired from the phone company. I've always sold real estate, put myself through college selling real estate. About 45 years in the business. I think that Jackson, the restoration of Jackson from a financial standpoint is going to center around real estate and its development and its improvements on the land. So that's one of the things that I'm really concerned with. But I've been involved with talk radio for 35 years, kind of backed into that. So I've got a combination of politics, business, real estate, and just plain old clear-eyed common sense that we'll be bringing to the mayoral's position. One of the things that has brought me into this race is because I see our leadership in Jackson down through the years seems to be living below the upbringing that I received from my parents. I cannot abide the direction leadership has taken this city and our community. So I'm stepping up, offering my services and my insight based on 69 years of having lived and also about 45 years having lived in Jackson. These problems are not unsolvable. We just have people who are not willing to address the real issues that bring these problems to fruition.
And you kind of answered my question there of why do you want to run for mayor? And I understand your love of Jackson and all of the ideas and plans that you have or hopes that it can be. Right. But tell us, is there another reason, anything else behind why you want to be mayor?
Well, I hear so much talk about from the various candidates all up and down the food chain about leadership. What I see the biggest challenge Jackson has right now is asset management. We have so many assets that the taxpayers of Jackson are funding, paying for, sacrificing to pay for that are not being properly deployed. That's a big concern. And as a Jacksonian and the taxpayer, I decided, wait a minute, we need to find out what's going on with all our monies that's going into the city coffers. So that's one of the reasons why I'm running. The other thing is that Jackson, I want to be the first person to build an exit ramp. An off-ramp of the race toll road. Right now in Jackson and Mississippi in general, we're on a toll road of race that has no end point, it has no exit. All you have is fines and fees. And I want to get to the point where the people of Jackson and the employees of Jackson handle the business of Jackson and look for only results, not race, not issues to complain about, but things that we can celebrate having achieved together.
Well, tell us some of the things that you've done, that you've been involved in the community in here in Jackson.
Well, when you talk about community involvement, anytime you're a businessman, anytime you're providing services, solving the problems of another, you're solving the problems of Jackson. And as a real estate agent, and as a businessman who've owned businesses, who've dealt with the city, dealt with the hassles of dealing with the city, I'm committed to making the city of Jackson not be the drag on anybody's dreams or business plans should they choose to do business with the city of Jackson. What's broken in Jackson is more of an attitude than the system. We got people with the attitude that they might give you good city services or they may not, depending on how they feel. We want to get on the same page. We need all city workers rowing in the same direction, but you have to set the tone from the top about being about business.
What are you think some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about Jackson, whether it be the voters or people from the outside of the Jackson area?
I don't know if they're really misconceptions. I think Jackson just has a branding problem that's brought on by our actions or inactions over the years. And I've had an opportunity to speak to many community groups and had input from the people in the audience. One of the things that I would say to the citizens of Jackson, guys, at the end of the day, we are our first responders. If the state doesn't do anything, if Tate doesn't do anything, if the federal government doesn't do anything, we got to work with those 2 red nickels that we receive, not unlike what our parents did for us. If all they had was 2 red nickels, that's what they had to run that household off of. But we keep talking about and getting distracted about what somebody else should be doing for Jackson. And that may be true. But what happens if they decided, whether it's true or not, we're not going to do anything? It still falls back on us.
It does come back on everyone. We are all citizens of Jackson. It starts,
Absolutely.
So what are some of the issues that you're hearing from voters as you're out there doing your campaigning and everything? What are some of the top issues, maybe top 3 that you're hearing from voters?
Well, obviously, it's the crime, the condition of the city, the overall livability of the city, our schools, infrastructure. And I hear all these things, and many times what we hear is just a restating of the problem. None of the candidates that I've heard are really talking about, if you cannot finance the solutions are meaningless. There's a bunch of aspirational goals. We've got to think past that. We have to get past it. And how you do it is deal with what the marketplace is requiring. In my estimation, and from our vantage point on the political totem pole, the leadership of Jackson have been ignoring what the marketplace is telling us they want. For instance, the Mississippi Development Authority will tell any entity, any individual, anybody who would ask that if your area, your town, your county wants to be considered for one of their large projects like a Continental Tire or Nissan, you have to deal with the educational component. The city of Jackson and all the candidates, look at their platform. None of them, save 1 or 2, me and another young lady, are talking about the educational component. If you don't fix that, then you're not a contender for those big projects like Nissan and Amazon. And the citizens of Jackson, we're being held hostage by a leadership that won't address that component. Without that, all the other things are going to fail. Been in real estate 45 years, to the last man. Every person gets in their car who wants to go house hunting. First they want to know what kind of schools, what's the conditions, what's the ratings. And if Jackson is going to ignore that, then all the other things is just kabuki dancing, it's fan dancing. It's not going to work.
Well, what is your plan then to help improve Jackson Public Schools?
That's a good question. And that's one of the things about the first 4 years of a Kim Wade administration. We're not even talking about increases in taxes or if we can raise more funds into the coffers of the city of Jackson, then we're blessed. But in the event that we don't, we're going to take the monies that we're getting, get a bigger bang for the buck. We're going to be asking more of everybody who receives those dollars to let them know that we're in a tight right now. We need you, the citizen, to help out us. When we were helping you out when things were good, we had no problems with it. Now we're in a slight pickle as citizens, as taxpayers of this town. So we need everybody to make a sacrifice at this point.
And one of the problems a lot of people have talked about here in Jackson is another thing we're doing a series on all year is the blighted areas, the blighted communities, abandoned properties, abandoned homes. What are some of your plans? Do you have any plans to help address the blight here in the city?
Not only do I have plans, I have workable plans. These are not aspirational goals that when we overcome and when we come together. No. This is just practical. So much of, first of all, let me just say this. My observation from having thrown my hat in the race for mayor, and that is the industry that has left Jackson, the Delphi, the Jackson area, the Hood Industries, the WorldComs, and all those industries, the Puckett Industries, all those that have left, well, they've been replaced. There's another industry that's the top of the pile now, and it is compassion industry. A series of 501c3s, nonprofits, preachers, politicians, people who contract with the government. They've formed a coalition, and I'm not saying this is in a negative sense. I'm just saying this is the reality of the marketplace. They form a coalition, and they are pursuing their own interests, in my estimation, sometimes to the detriment to the rest of the taxpayers, because if you are a nonprofit serving the less fortunate in society, those less fortunate are your clients. They're no different than the clients that are stop by McDonald's for lunch. In other words, McDonald's want more clients. The people who have nonprofits, they want more clients. That's why we have more poverty, because the nonprofits have been successful. This is not a put down. What I'm suggesting is that we need to come to the table and ask the nonprofits, the stew pot, for instance, if the stew pot feeds 200 people a day for absolutely free, don't ask anything of them other than they pray before they eat. I'm saying to them and all nonprofits, you're going to have a work component to your giveaway, because that, in my estimation, that's 200 hours of free labor that we should be getting to help trim the grass over at the cemeteries and help pick up paper around the stew pot. If we can't ask them of that, they're constantly asking of us. And as I said before, when Jackson was prosperous under Dale Danks and the cupboards were full of resources, we gave to the nonprofits just graciously. And now we're saying to the nonprofits, guys, we need to sit down and discuss how can we fine tune this to the benefit of all Jacksonians, not just the people that you serve, but the people who pay for the things that you provide the people that you serve. So all we're asking is everybody come to the table, check the eagles at the door, and let's do what's best for kids, and let's do what's best for property values. If you look out for the kids, you're looking out for the future. If you look out for property values, you can fund the future. Those two things are the loftier goals that we all have to aspire to, that we all can agree upon. Because otherwise, we're going to get in skirmishes about, well, I don't like that sweater you wear, and then you don't like my jacket. And so we get none of the big issues accomplished. We're looking for adults to step up and say, we're going to do these things for the benefit of future generations and not for my ego extension or my resume to be enhanced.
So say that you get elected, what is your first priority then? Is it to quote unquote fix the schools, or is it to fix the blighted communities? Because I mean, if you come into areas where there's squatters in homes and abandoned houses and all of the things that come with that, people aren't going to want to move into those areas.
True.
And so does it matter then if the schools are getting better because the communities aren't being repaired?
And that's a good question that you ask. And the lady asked last night that same question, and I said, well, let me get more clarity on what I'm trying to say. The fixing of the schools is to fix the kids going forward. Right now, and I mentioned to you about the nonprofits and the 501c3s. If you look at what they do, for the most part, they're fixing the lives of broken men and women 30, 40, 50 years old. My point is, first of all, if you got a basement that's flooding, you need to cut the water off. Then you're going to bail the water out. Then you're going to fix the problem with the broken pipe. Right now, the fact that we're producing all these kids year after year, more juvenile delinquents than society can absorb, we got to cut the spigot off. Then we're going to come back and start dealing with these older folks that we're dealing with. But right now, we cannot have the thrust being the older adults. That society doesn't move forward like that. This is where we're missing the theologians that used to guide our society, the old Howard Thurmans, the old Dr. Benjamin Mays, and people like that. We're going with these people who are so short-sighted, they'll take a little walk-around money from our politicians to do things that harm our kids' future right now. Because if they can't get a good education, they're going to be standing out in front of that stop and go begging you for money in about 20 years. We need to stop that. So I understand what you're saying about how do we deal with the now. We got to be working on both of them. That's why what the nonprofits are doing is that's valuable work, but we have to redirect it so they're not producing so many people that they serve who turn out to be what you're seeing with the housing. That's insolence. That's an insolent attitude that has been gendered by some entity, some place. If I give you something and don't require anything from you, you're going to get to the point where I owe you. So when I was in the Nation of Islam and we were standing out there on the corner selling newspapers, we were instructed, if you pull up and say, Kim, I don't want a newspaper, but here's $1 for it. We can't take that dollar, because if I take that dollar without giving you that newspaper, it creates an imbalance in our relationship. So next time you see me, I'm looking either down with my eyes or you're looking down with yours, because the relationship's out of a joint. This is why when you give somebody a free meal, you got to expect something from them, because otherwise society is going to go where Jackson has gone and where we find ourselves. This is not rocket science. This is the way we used to fix things.
How do you plan on involving the residents in your decision making and the plans that you have for Jackson?
That's a great question. because my goal, my administration is going to be geared for the people who make Jackson work, the people who pay for Jackson. Because the people who don't care, the people who's throwing the paper down, look, their life is good. They don't have any problems. So I'm not going to spend 8 hours a day trying to convince them to do better by me so I can do better for them. No, we're going to work with the people who's generating the paychecks, who generate the jobs. So if we have, let's take Belhaven, for instance. We're going to do the Dave Ramsey roll-up method in terms of providing city services to all Jacksonians. So it's going to be based on how bad do you want it. So in other words, if we give Belhaven $1 towards improving their neighborhood, they're going to take that $1 and turn it into $3, because they're going to have volunteers out there helping out, cleaning out the ditches, sweeping down the curbs, not throwing paper down. And check this out. This is not rocket science how this is done. Mary Hawkins is doing it up there in Madison. They're doing it all over the country. As you increase the livability and the quality of life of Belhaven, then all the vacant lots in Belhaven fill in with market rate houses. When it fills in with market rate houses, then the Pizza Hut shows up. That's when the little gas station shows up. And for every new business that locates in an area that has participated in this program, they get 1 cent sales tax off that new business generated that goes into the Belhaven fund. So if they want speed bumps, they can pay for their own. So we got to get it where there's a meritocracy, where you get rewarded for keeping your neighborhood up, because we have to have pockets of prosperity. Otherwise, there's no tax base to the city of Jackson, because the people who have ruined South Jackson, they're going to ruin North Jackson. We got to get their attention. And the only way you get that is say, wait a minute, we get to you when you get your act together. We're not punishing you, but you're punishing us when you bring down my property values. I used the illustration about the stew pot and the 200 dinners. If they say, okay, we fed 200 homeless people today. Okay, those homeless people get full, they walk downtown and they camp out in front of Steve's Deli. Steve's Deli, he no longer sells 100 dinners that day, he sells 50. So Steve used to donate to the stew pot. So he's going out of business. So when Steve goes out of business, what happens to the stew pot eventually? It goes out of business. You see why we have to bring them to the table and say, guys, how do we balance the system? And that's all we're talking about. All systems have to be balanced. Jackson's system of government is out of balance. End of story.
Well, let's talk a lot of things. It sounds like almost kind of lead back to crime in the area. Crime is a big issue in Jackson. Although, like I've said, in every interview, the numbers have gone down. They're not drastic in some areas, not drastic in others, but the numbers have gone down. What do you plan to do to continue that forward momentum of keeping the crime numbers down?
First of all, let me be clear. There's no solution to crime. Okay. What there are trade-offs to solving aspects of the crime problem. And last night, when I spoke at a community group, the question of crime came up. And I pointed out to him, I said, look, just here in this room, one person says we need to do more roadblocks. So if you do a roadblock, then you got another group from the same community who will say that's racist. So even though the roadblocks have proven to cut down the incidence of crime, if you got somebody over here who's saying it, so we got a trade-off to be made. So within the community, you got to decide what's important. Who's going to navigate? Who's going to steer? The person who wants the roadblocks or the person who says it's racist? This is why I was saying earlier, we got so many things that we can't get to the meat of the problem, because we got to spend 2 or 3 hours of every meeting discussing racism, Jim Crow, what happened in 1492. We got to deal with the problems of February 18th, 2025. And the only way we can do that is by being clear-eyed in our solutions and not wishful in our aspirations.
What can you do as mayor then to help convince either current Jacksonians to not leave Jackson or others to come into the city of Jackson?
Well, first of all, I'm a capitalist. I believe in the marketplace determining where people spend their money. Every time you spend $1, you're making a vote. Jackson has an obligation and a duty as any other city to present itself in a manner where people want to stay. Whenever you have to subsidize businesses to come in and do business with you, that means that your conditions are not ideal to the marketplace. This is what I was saying, using the Belhaven example, that if you improve the quality of life and the livability, then people will say, I want to be there. and I'll pay whatever it costs, then you don't need subsidies. Things start taking care of itself. But because we have this mindset that somebody else needs to do something, as I said, I spent 15 years in the Nation of Islam. Do for self was our calling card. So when I say do for self, we doing this for self-esteem purposes, for building purposes, and for making Jackson better. It's not going to kill us to be men and women who stand 10 toes down on the things that we believe, handling the business that has been assigned to us as parents and as citizens of this town.
What about the infrastructure of Jackson with the roadways, the potholes, the lights that don't work, the streets that aren't lined, and then we have the water system, which of course was taken over by the federal government, and it's just a crumbling infrastructure. How do we get that back on track? What's your plan to fix it?
And that's another good question. The plan is not popular, but we're not about popularity. We're about results. We're going to make things work. We're going to bring in the people who are the smartest, to work on the hardest problems to their fruition and completion. They'll get credit for being the one who solved that problem, not being the one who's gay who solved that problem, who's black who solved that problem, but result oriented. When you talk about how you solve that problem, you got to generate more revenues to pay for it. Right now, because of the city's adversarial relationship with Jackson Water, and let me say to Ted Hennepin, hey brother, I'm coming. You're going to have all the resources you need. You're not going to have any gruff coming out of the city. Right there on Hanging Moss at Forest Avenue, Jackson Water was working on a broken pipe there. 2 feet off of where they were digging, City of Jackson had a pothole that's been there for years. But because they don't have a relationship with Jackson Water, where they say, Jackson Water, if you get in a situation like that, then dig out the whole thing around it, our pothole, and we'll reimburse you for our portion of it. But because they have this adversarial relationship, the citizens of Jackson are shortchanged by that. We just need some adults who are going to come in there and say, look, Ted Hennepin has the goods. We can't have him leave here with all this institutional knowledge of the infrastructure and the underground layout of our city, leaving here mad. We need to work with that man and get him to train people who will be able to carry on after he's gone. But all this junior high, high school behavior is unacceptable to getting things done. We have to grow up, get off the personality and race thing and say, Ted, we want to work with you. And Ted's job is to make Jackson look good. My job is to make Jackson look good. You as a citizen, you as a city employee, everything we do has to make Jackson look good at the end of the day.
What about the roadways then? How was your plan, or what is your plan rather, to improve the roadways here in Jackson?
One of the things we want to do is lay out a grid system over every ward in the city of Jackson and get the Public Works Department and Jackson Water to overlay the priorities that they have over that grid. And within that grid, let's say Ward 1, we look at Ward 1, we look at what the Country Club of Jackson is asking for, what Carol Wood's asking for, and yada, yada, yada. And then we see where it would fit at on our expenditures, the money that we have to expend. What's the priority? Right now, we've been doing projects based on somebody having a connection, enough votes on the city council to get this project done. Whether it's the best thing to be done in terms of the priority of projects need to be done by the city of Jackson, that's not the consideration. It will be under Kim Wade administration. We're going to do what's best for Jackson. That's what's best for one of my supporters. They need to understand there's going to be more money in a thriving Jackson. And I tell people, look, there'll be more money for you to steal after I'm gone when I get done, if you let me do what I can do.
Are there any cities here in the States that you look at that have maybe implemented some plans like this and have become successful that you may want to emulate or look to as inspiration?
Yeah, it's called the American way, the American values that built America, that made all these cities great. What Mary Hawkins is doing up there in Madison is not proprietary. She's not sitting up there with her cards close to her chest. This is my next move. I don't want anybody. Everything she's done out in the open. It's not rocket science. If you get the rooftops, the businesses will come. You get the rooftops by having quality schools. We have within the Black community, for instance, in North Jackson, we control the school system. If we were to get Callaway, North Jackson, and Kirksey Elementary up to a level 5 or 1, whatever the highest designation is, over a 2 to 3 year period, you will see all that vacant land. There's over 1,200 acres of land in North Jackson that I'm aware of. Half of it is owned by JPS, that if they get their schools up to a level 5, it will fill in with houses that don't have to be subsidized by a government entity. And when you get those, you're going to start seeing your tax base rise, and you can support the infrastructure that you just spoke of. It's not rocket science. People won't bring in the people from the real estate industry who know how to make this thing work and say, guys, what can we do? Jackson Airport Authority, they're trying to sell their own land. Why don't they just give it to a real estate broker who knows what to do and let them do it? JPS is trying to market their own land, give it to some real estate brokers who know how to do it. Jackson is being ran by people from the compassion industry, people with very little business expense, but they got all the heart in the world. Nothing wrong with that. But you are compassionate with the overflow of the harvest from men and women who get out there and plant and plow the fields. Right now, we got the people who chop up the harvest and distribute it, determining what the man who plants the harvest get to do. We can't operate like that. Society doesn't move forward like that.
What are your plans to revitalize downtown Jackson and to bring more entertainment type things maybe to Jackson, or more opportunity for people to do things here?
Well, first of all, downtown Jackson, if we're going to be honest, it's not coming back anytime soon. Short of that proposed casino, nobody has enough resources to make the dent in Jackson that's going to make a difference. We have to deal with the fact that we have a perception, a brand problem. People don't want to be around all this riffraff walking the streets. And we can say, oh, these people are homeless, all that's fair and good. But we've had homeless since time immemorial, but we've never had a homeless problem where they're burning down houses like this. It's been cold before. They weren't burning down houses like that. They don't do it in any other towns. There's a reason why this is happening. I think it's part of that Green Deal that they were trying to push, where they forced people to come back and redo everything to Project 2030 standards, et cetera. But in order for us to bring businesses back down, we got to deal with the human capital problem that's not being deployed. We got too many people walking around with nothing to do but get to eat 3 square meals a day from somebody. And I'm saying, no, if we're going to be doing that, at least we're going to have a clean city. We're not going to be feeding people where we can't get them to contribute something to the upkeep of Jackson.
So when you say Jackson is being ran by a compassion
compassion industry, yeah. Like, so, it's like the blues industry, the cotton industry. It's an industry, a coalition of groups that do what they do. I'm not saying they're doing it out with nefarious intentions. I'm just saying it has evolved that way. And what happens is when you have a government structure that's dominated by people who are in the compassion industry, they want more money every year to serve more of the people who we don't need. We need people who do business. That's why we're doing the business expo on the 1st of the month with young people. We're going to grow the citizens that Jackson needs 5-10 years from now, starting right now. And yes, it's a laborious process, but what else do? We don't have any choice. It's like treading water. If we stop, we're going to drown.
How do the people of Jackson, how do they know that they can trust you, trust your administration? That has been what we've heard from viewers and things. A very big issue is the broken trust here in Jackson. Fortunately, we do have a mayor who is involved in an alleged bribery scandal. How can our citizens, how can the voters know that they can trust you to not wind up in that same situation or to not be corrupt?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I had, and a friend of mine, he's a lawyer, 45 years in this town. If I said his name, everybody would know him. And he saw me down at the Chancery Court building. He said, Kim, I heard that you're running for mayor. I said, yeah. He said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, now, and we've had heated discussions down through the years. It's very towering intellect. He says, we don't agree on things politically. You know that. He said, but I'm going to vote for you for mayor. And I said, well, why? He said, because one thing I know about you, you're not a thief. He said, I've been practicing law in this town. If you were stealing, I would have heard about it by now. And I'm not. I'm 69 years old. I don't have anything to prove. My kids are grown and they're squared away. I'm not on a paper chase. I'm retired. I'm not a rich man, but I'm not going to be living in the streets. I'm not going to be begging people for bread. I'm blessed, and I want to pass those blessings on to other Jacksonians who are going to be coming behind me, and we're going to do that again. The problem with Jackson is the story of Esau and Jacob. You got leadership that's not adding value to the resources that God has given them. This is not a leadership problem. This is a stewardship problem here in the city of Jackson. We need men and women with Christian courage who will stand 10 toes down on that which is right. And I tell people, I've been saying the same thing for 35 years on the radio, and I've been living it all my life. What you hear me saying is what I learned at the dinner table, which brings me to what I told you when we sat down here. We have leadership that's living below my upbringing. For me to sit silent while we watch this leadership ride us over the cliff would be an affront to what my parents stood for and lived for. So I'm standing on those principles. Everything they did was for us kids. When they got up and put on those blue collars and went to work for less than minimum wage, raising 11 kids, they didn't want us coming back to roost on their doorstep. They were trying to raise strong men and women who could stand and handle their business. We're going back to that time, and we're not going to live off our kids' social security numbers as adults, taking advantage of what should be their opportunities of the future.
One more question. You got started thinking about what you were saying. I got off track myself there. The kids are the future, and the future of Jackson, the future of anywhere. Do you have any other plans outside of helping to improve the education to give the kids in our area more opportunities to do things to keep them too busy to get into a life of crime or being what was you referred to it a second ago? I can't even think of it, hoodlum or something. But
well, here's the deal. There are other people out there, Representative Crudup, and he's doing a tremendous work with the young people. We want them to keep doing that. I'm 69 years old. I got to thinking, never once in my life have I ever said, man, I didn't get to play enough. I didn't get to play enough basketball. Nobody says that. At the end of the day, these kids need to work. My approach is this here. That's why we're doing a youth expo at March 1st at the Salvation Army building on County Line Road. That's on a Saturday from 10 to 2. But here's the deal. My position is, let's take these kids. You take a child 9 years old. What do they tell you? Mama, when I become a millionaire, I'm going to take care. You've heard that from your child, right?
No.
Oh, you're hoping to hear.
They're wondering when I'm going to become that millionaire.
Well, most kids will say, Mom, I want to take care of you. And when they hit the Super Bowl and professional ball, they do those things. What I'm saying to you, these kids naturally want to make money. All right. So you take them 9 years old, you work them hard, but you pay them good. Stand on the bed with a pocket full of money. They wake up the next morning where they can go to the soda fountain. Because I did this. Went to the soda fountain. I could buy anything I wanted. Bought me a cheeseburger, a float. I'm feeling like a big shot. And it changes the world. You don't have to do 5 or 6 years of mentoring when the kid's got his own money. And that's what we're doing. We're just going back to the things that worked. Here we are. Jackson's sitting on 113 square miles of real estate. And we're trying to say that this generation of Blacks, we can't even feed ourselves off 113 square miles of real estate. Now, there's something else wrong. Amazon, Governor Reeves, Governor Bryant, and others have brought in $17 billion worth of investment between Amazon 1 and 2 and Nissan in a 30-mile radius of Jackson. Jackson and Canton seems to be the only two municipalities that haven't parlayed that into some serious quality of life gains. And I'm saying the reason why is because, number one, the compassion industry is putting too much emphasis on people who's getting their second and third and fourth, fifth time at life, chance at life. And I'm not against, because I love America for that very reason, that it's the home of the first, second, and third, fourth, X number of chances. But we got to take care of the kids so we can cut off the number of kids whose lives are broken that have to be repaired by grown men and women using grants and scholarships.
When you say you put a kid to work, a lot of people would say, Kim, that's child labor. You're talking child labor here.
I'm gonna work them to death. I'm gonna work. Look, unless they have bullet holes in them, they are going to work. And the thing about it is, again, you hear people. When I was coming up, there wasn't. The word mentor was not used the way the mentors in our neighborhood were guys with blue collars. Mm-hmm. These were people who didn't know they were mentors. They were just handling their business. Nowadays, you're a mentor if you put on a suit and walk in front of a child. Yes, you're a mentor, aren't you? No. I tell people, you know who the mentors are? Whoever's standing in front of that child right now, you the mentor. You do right in front of that child. That's how you do it. But we make everything into a program. It's not a program. It's a commitment. It's about relationships. But now, I'm not saying those who concentrate on the sports aspect of it, because coaches do a tremendous job in changing lives. God bless what coaches do. I tip my hat to them. What I'm saying is, guys, that we have to create our kids are walking around with chips on their shoulders in the face of all this opportunity. That bothers me. When you have a child who's walking around here like he just picked 40 pounds of cotton and ain't did nothing but just walked around there looking crazy, and somebody looking at crazy at him for looking crazy. And so now you got young kids now who want to kill the child on the block over that they played pee-wee football with 3 years earlier. No, we had to sit down and say, what are we doing and what are we doing wrong? What are we doing right? If we're not going to do that, all we're doing is fan dancing and doing kabuki dancing.
Doing kabuki dancing. I'm gonna have to get you one day to show me exactly what kabuki dancing is.
It's meaningless gyrations that's going nowhere, as evidence for where we are in the city of Jackson. You got people involved in relationships. It's just like now in the Kim Wade administration, we're not going to do race. You know what we're going to do? Home training. When you come down and deal with the city of Jackson, you act like you have some sense. City employees act like you have some sense and handle the business at hand. We're not going to spend, if we have a business meeting that starts at 8 o'clock to deal with the traffic lights, the first 2 hours ain't going to be about the number of blacks or number of gays or the number of women we have doing this. No, it's what's wrong with the lights? When can we fix it and how much is it going to cost? We're getting down to brass tacks. We're wasting too much time on that. I'm not going to keep wasting time on that. It makes some people feel good. Well, it don't make me feel good. And as mayor, we're not going to waste time on that. We're going to we're going to spend our time fixing things, not complaining about things that need to be fixed.
Well, we've asked a lot of questions and you've given a lot of answers, but is there anything else that you want to say to those who may be considering voting for you that we maybe haven't mentioned already?
I'm going to be a disruptor. We're coming in. I'm breaking things up at the door. I'm going down to City Hall to do the same thing the average Jacksonian is doing. They're going to open that door, look in there. What the heck y'all been doing? Where's the money? What are y'all doing with my money? I'm doing the same thing that they've been, the same question that the average person would ask. I'm bringing clear-eyed, common sense approaches to the problems. I'm not doing all this old aspirational when we come together crap. We're going to fix problems. And people say, well, you're just trying to bring in the white folks. No, we're bringing in the people who make things work. If you're going to do the black, and listen, don't try to tell me anything about the black equation. I was in the Nation of Islam for 15 years. I've heard all that rhetoric. At the end of the day, this is about people doing. Chokwe came into office wearing the African garb and the kufi and all that kind of crap, and he turned out to be the biggest disappointment for black people. We're looking for men and women of integrity and quality that will stand on business. As I said before, I ain't looking for a job. In fact, I'm not running to be mayor. I'm running to fix Jackson. I don't need my ego extended. I don't need my resume enhanced. I want Jackson to work because I don't want to leave Jackson. So we're trying to give people who can leave Jackson, who have a reason and desire to stay, a reason to stay. That's all. It ain't rocket science. And what Mary Hawkins, and I've sat down with Mayor Hawkins, I've spoken with all the mayors in the surrounding areas. Mary said, Kim, she said, I'm not a bean counter. I'm not going to sit down there and try to figure out where the last penny is in this budget, but I hire somebody who does. I'm going to hire a city manager, facto or de facto. I've asked the governor, asked the former governor, I said, if you got a list of names of people who would make a great city manager, send them on. What I want, and going back to your question you asked earlier about what can we do to bring in things to give people something to do in the Jackson will be a regional destination, whether we want it or not. We tried to do the Black Soul City thing. Well, we fumbled the ball. We don't have to keep going down that road. We can do things because the city of Clinton wants to build a park that butts up to some property that Jackson has. I want them to do it. I want them to control it. I want them to patrol it. Because when your family reunion is held here in Jackson, we want to have 4 or 5 things they can do in the metro area. They can go to the Brandon Amphitheater. They can go to the Outlet Mall. They can go to LaFleur Park. They can go to the Clinton Park. We can go down to Byron and do things. We're going to make this a regional destination. When you go to Dallas or Atlanta, you may end up in one of the suburbs, but when you call back, hey, I'm out here in Dallas, you don't say I'm out here in Denton. You say where, because there's nothing wrong. We got to get out of this notion that it's got to be a black this or that. No, the market, think about it. When you go on vacation, you're going somewhere where it's nice, where you feel safe and it's clean. Well, if Jackson wants to be considered a destination point, we got to clean things up. One of the things that I'm going to do regarding trash, the late Lee Vance said something to me one time. He said, Kim, he said, ain't but a small number of people committing these crimes. Half of them in jail and half of them are going to jail. So what I'm going to do with all these cameras they're hooking up, nobody's watching them. You know why? Because if I paid you $15 an hour to sit here at this monitor and watch the crime camera, what are you going to be doing? You're going to be watching your phone.
Probably fall asleep.
Falling asleep or playing solitaire.
Yeah.
You know who's not going to be doing that? Those guys sitting down there in Raymond in the jail. I'm going to put monitors right in front of their jail cell, and police got some crime tapes they want reviewed. All they got to put down, because everybody down and know who's committing crimes. Oh, that's Pookie. So he called and put a dime on Pookie. I'm going to put $20 on his books. So they're going to sit there all day long because somebody down there ain't got nobody putting money on their commissary. That's their job. We're going to solve these problems. That'll be the same way with people dumping stuff. When they dump trash and they catch that license plate number and we trace that license plate number, put another $20 on their books. We got everything we need. Goes back to what I said earlier, asset management. When it comes to the trash, when you sit that old refrigerator out at the curb to get picked up, you should be able to call Richard's Disposal, say, I got a heavy appliance pickup. They say, okay, we're going to charge you extra $25 to your bill. And Richard's calls a minority contract if they want to do that. And they go pick it up, they get the $25. If they don't pick it up, you know where it's going to end up? It's going to end up on the side of the road somewhere. We have to just get ahead of, we may on the front end, the first couple of years, we may have to spend a disproportionate amount of money on cleanup. But hopefully we'll train people where we're not throwing it down, so we have a diminishing outlay for that expenditure going forward. But we have to train people. Don't throw it down. It ain't rocket science, but sadly we're at this point where we do need to remind people we don't need to be doing that here in the Jackson. That goes back to doing what? Raising property values. There's a method to everything, and the common thread exists like a color in a plaid. It always exists, that everything has to result in increased property values, or at least stabilize property values. If you don't do that, all you're doing is making yourself feel good about how much compassion you have for the less fortunate.
And you're not saying, when you talk about being a compassion industry and what you're saying are issues that stem from a compassion industry, you're not saying that you're going to be trying to get rid of this or anything like that.
We want them to refocus. As I said before, the conditions have changed. When the stew pot was getting started, Billy Brumfield was just getting started, and all the other ones, Jackson had businesses everywhere. Mississippi Valley Gas was right across the street from the stew pot. And a lot of those entities have moved from the area. And so if we're not going to ask the question, well, why are they moving? And we just keep hanging on the fact that what we do is so noble, that's short-sighted, it's not going to work, and then eventually everything is going to collapse. And I'm asking you, why would you let it collapse if you know that these people are dependent on you and all you have to do is adjust, make some, because they're asking us to adjust. They're asking us to give our last dollar. And we've already demonstrated our heart. Now you questioning our heart when we're telling you there's nothing wrong with our heart. We don't have any more resources to give. And you telling us we're a bad person. Come on, guys. We're bigger than this. We got to do better.
Do you believe that Jackson has the financial resources now to make some of these improvements that you are looking at?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Jackson's budget in 2024 is $81 million less revenues than it was in 2023. Jackson budget now is $300-something million. It was $4-something last year. So we've lost revenues of $80-something million that I don't know how we're going to replace. That's almost 20% of our budget. And so we got people who are operating on their emotions and feelings about how strongly they feel about something. And I'm saying this stuff doesn't paper out. We got to be dispassionate about it. When our parents didn't have but 2 red nickels, they had to make that thing work. And so this is what we're doing. We're just doing what grownups do. That's all. We're not doing what kids do when I get paid 2 weeks from now, and then I'll take it. Well, no, you'd already spent 2 weeks. You already spent that too. So we just need the adults to come in here to look at the numbers and say, guys, this is what we can do. That $81 million, for instance, we're spending $120 million on infrastructure annually right now. Again, we got to look at, so where's it? We don't have the equipment, so where's the money going? I don't see anybody out there. I see every now and then you see a truck out there throwing some asphalt down, but we need machines. I've got a way of financing the first part of this. When Mayor Danks was mayor, he used to advertise, well, they used to be advertising on the bus benches for J-Tran. That was, at that time, was bringing in $600,000 a year. That was 30 years ago. I anticipate we could generate $1 million. Now we use that to buy equipment. At minimum, start buying asphalt that we can give to the supervisors and let them take it, since they have the equipment and the manpower, and start fixing the streets. That's all the people want, are the streets fixed. They don't care who gets credit for it. But right now, because you have an administration that don't work well with the supervisors, then we're not getting a lot of things done. All we're doing is just acting like adults. So we'll take that $1 million and start slowly acquiring equipment and rebuilding our public works department. But it's going to be methodical. People want an instant solution. No, you're going to get trade-offs to get to the solutions that you want.
What about accountability in the administration or in the businesses that the city does
Would
work
be
with? For instance, a study, or not study, but investigation that we did into AMR showed that they were uh, well below their contract requirements
mhm,
as far as times to pick people up or to go to calls and things.
mhm.
And it was like within a 3-month time span, they could have been fined $1.3 million, I believe it
Mm.
is. Uh, but of course, now that is Hines County. It's not
Right.
City of Jackson proper. But are you going to be holding people accountable when they are not meeting their contractual obligations for the City of Jackson?
Well, obviously, and I'm a big stickler for that. I look at life as a contract. When we were setting up this interview, you told me the terms, you told me the time, I agree, yada yada yada. It's a contract, and all of our relationships are eventually contracts. As relates to what you just described, I want the systems to balance. We need the systems to work. We don't necessarily punishment is if that's what the contract requires and allows. We need to pursue that. If there's a violation of it and it's beyond people's ability, yada yada yada, we can do that. But we don't need to incur any more legal costs suing people suing us. So we need to sit down with AMR and say, what is the source of this constant tardiness, picking up folks, etc. We want people to, it's like with coming in there, people say, are you going to fire everybody? No, if they're doing their job, we want them to do their job. That's all we're asking for. Same way with AMR. So we're going to look at the contract, see what the hitch and the giddy up. To that question, I look at that with the voting machines. I think there's something extremely wrong, not just the city of Jackson, if they have voting machines. I don't know if they use the counties, but what is the level that determines a failure? And we need to see what the contract says. So all those things will be open to review in a Kim Wade administration. As it relates to transparency, I would like to have the city budget chopped up 7 ways in the back of every city council person and the mayor have their portion of the budget that needs to be generated from their ward to remind people. Because I want everybody to be a part of solving Jackson. Right now, the department heads can't talk to the council people. Council people can't call, they got to go through the mayor. You won't have that. If Kenny Stokes get cornered up in Kroger's and they want to know about when you're going to do this, Kenny can call the director right then and there and get him on the phone. All this pettiness is going to end because the citizens want things to work. And that's all we're here for, is to deliver city services at the lowest cost possible. And I want the contractors to make money. You're just not going to make a killing because there's too much work to be done. You can make a good income over the long term solving Jackson's problem through your contracting, as opposed to you hitting a lick. You worth 20 million now, 30 million now, and the city of Jackson's finances are screwed forever. And that's what that water sewer contract actually did. It took a plug out of Jackson's finances that we're yet to recover from.
Well, tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want to donate to your campaign, if they want to support you, volunteer.
Yes.
How can they get in touch with you?
Well, you can go to votekimwade.com. That's the website. Our campaign headquarters is located at 5295 Highway I-55 Frontage Road South. That's in the Complete Flag Source building on the corner of Bounds Avenue and the Frontage Road. And you can also, when you go through the votekimwade.com, you can just click on the volunteer link, donate link. And I do want to remind people about the expo. That's going to be March 1st from 10 to 2 at the Salvation Army building. Again, we're going to build the business people and the taxpayer and the citizen we want. So if you got a young entrepreneur in your family, if you have a business and you want your child to be the salesperson, spokesperson for that, send them on down there. There's no cost. You get the child gets to keep all the money. There's no booth fees. There's no requirement to pay anything. We want young folks to get their hustle on. We want capitalists. We want people who love to make money because money generates tax dollars, and tax dollars solves the people of Jackson's financing problems.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for coming in
Thank
today
you.
and taking the time. I really appreciate it. Guys, we will be back, of course, tomorrow at 1 o'clock with another mayor candidate. So make sure you're here for that. And of course, at 2:30 today, our First Alert weather team will be in here to give you details on the incredibly cold weather that is going to be coming our way. frigid temperatures. I believe we're even under a winter warning.
Mhm.
Be here at 2:30 so you can hear from the First Alert Weather team for sure on what is happening. But Kim, again, I really appreciate you
I
coming in.
appreciate it. Thank you for the interview. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. You guys have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.
Take care.